I need everyone listening to this need to stress to you that the director and editor relationship is extremely important. Extremely, extremely important because without your editor, you're not going to have your film. And if you don't have that good relationship with your editor, and if you don't make them comfortable or make them feel like their voices are being heard, then they're not going to want to put in as much effort into your project, into your film. So it's really important to just listen to what they have to say and take it into consideration because 9 times out of 10 they're telling you something that you definitely should listen to and should want to hear. It's something that's going to make the film 10 times better.
My name is Wes Gibbons, and welcome back to the Tungsten Originals podcast. You just heard part of my conversation with editor Jayda Cardoza. We discussed her growth as an editor, the director-editor relationship, and her new job working in the post-production department at Marvel. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy. Episode 61 of the Tungsten Originals podcast. Jayda, welcome to the podcast.
Hello.
How are you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing well. I forgot to ask in our pre-thing. Are you calling? Is this from LA?
No, so I'm actually in Atlanta right now.
Oh, okay. Awesome.
Yeah. We're based in Atlanta. I'm actually still in my office. I got off around like 7:30, but I was like 30-minute drive home. I might as well just sit here and wait until this is done.
So you're in your office right now?
I'm literally in my office.
That's amazing. Wow. We'll do like an office tour later or something. That's fantastic. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. This is very exciting. We both went to SCAD, so that's how we both know each other. You are a very talented editor who has made some great stuff, and I'm really excited to go into like the work you've done and this fancy office that you're calling us from, the gray behind the scenes. Yeah, exactly. It reminds me of like those panels in SCAD, like the panels in the classroom.
Yes.
It's honestly, like you can either be at an office in Atlanta or like Adler, and I couldn't tell the difference. So.
Honestly, I'm at Adler right now for being honest.
Yeah, exactly. But before we get into all that stuff, I want to learn more about like your background and how you landed into this industry. So I know you're from New Jersey. So
yes.
When did filmmaking start coming to your life and stuff?
So actually, it was in high school. I can't remember if it was I think it was sophomore year, actually. I was in a digital media class. It was one of those like BS classes that everyone took. And it was a BS class for me. I was like, yeah, let me just take this. I don't really want to do anything serious. Like, I'm in high school. Who's trying to do work?
Yeah.
But I remember one of the assignments, we had to go out and shoot, like film something with a camera, like at a store. Like any store that you wanted, and just like interview them and like cut it together. This was when Final Cut was like top dog, Yeah. So, and so I got into Final Cut and I was just going. I was like, oh, hold on, wait. I actually kind of like this a little bit, having a little bit of fun. And I realized I was like the only one taking it seriously in the class. And I was like, okay, I mean, that's cool, but whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, it started off as sophomore. I started doing like little After Effects, Final Cut, making our little title intros and stuff like that. And then SCAD, soon after, I think it was like junior year, SCAD came to visit our school. Like when they have like colleges visit and like you skip a period and go listen to that college talk or representative or whatever. And SCAD came and they did their great presentation.
They're very good at the presentation.
Listen, I was sitting there amazed. I was like, wow, I want to go to this school. Yeah. Like I have to go. So honestly, SCAD was my first choice. And that was the only school I was going to apply to. And then my digital media teacher, she was just like, what are you going to do if you don't get in? I'm like, well, I don't know. I don't want to go anywhere else. So I got to get in. But and it kind of just took off from there. I went into SCAD already knowing that I wanted to go into post-production or like editing. Okay. So yeah, that's pretty much where it came from.
So when in high school did it transition from like a fun thing to do in your spare time to like, I see myself doing this as a career?
The crazy thing is it was just that one class because I didn't have anything to do with it after that. I didn't really edit anything else after that because there were no other classes that offered that. That was like the only digital media class.
Mm-hmm.
And I it worked out though because it was digital media sophomore year, and then junior year was around the time you start looking for colleges.
Right.
So, I had to get my little SCAD video ready
Oh
for it to
yeah.
enter. So
Right.
I made a little video. I had like my little brother in it and everything. I think it was called The Bad Habit. And it was like a little boy gets caught stealing a cigarette from his sister's room. It was very childish. I don't know how I got in off of that, but I made it, luckily.
Yeah.
So I didn't even like really practice my editing skills. It was kind of just like, I'm not interested in anything else. Like,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's editing or not, I know I want to do something in the film or creative industry. So I was like, I'll just figure it out from there. And luckily, I just stuck with it, and that was just what I wanted to do from jump. So we're still riding strong over here.
it's lasting so far.
We're still doing good.
Right. So what was it like when you took your first editing class at SCAD? Like your first editing only class?
Oh, I was so excited because I was so tired of because like the editing class was like the last one.
It comes later on. Yeah.
Exactly. So I was doing all the pre-pro and production, and I was like, man, this really isn't for me. Like, I'm not like, the stuff is cool, and I give props for people that like to do that stuff, but producing is just too much paperwork for me. It's
a lot of paperwork.
I
have friends back home who don't work in film at all, and I'm always telling them when I'm in meetings and stuff, and they're like, is filmmaking just like meetings all the time? And I'm like, if you don't like meetings, this is not the industry for you.
Don't do it.
That's all it is these days.
Every day is, especially at SCAD, every day was a meeting. Oh, I got a meeting. Sorry, I gotta go.
Yeah, exactly.
I got a meeting.
Yep.
Got a meeting after class. Hold on. Sorry, can't do anything.
Yeah.
But honestly, I was so excited. I had Christopher Brennan was my first editing professor, and I absolutely loved him.
Yeah, he's amazing.
Great energy, man. Such a positive teacher. But and then after that, luckily, so like, how you're able, like, after you take all like the three mains, and then you're able to just dibble and dabble and go in the direction you want to go in. So I was able to start, I just focused on the editing classes. I didn't really take any of the...
You can do like digital cinematography.
Yeah. Like, any chance I had to take a post-production class, I was on it. I was like, I don't want to do any other stuff. Like,
right.
I hopped on, I got Avid certified. I was like, yeah, I need to do this, and this. Like, get everything straight. Everything else doesn't matter. Like, I got to learn about it. It's important to know, but that's not my focus. And so, it was just cool because I was excited I was nervous to learn Avid, but once, because I was Premiere. I was all for Premiere. I was like, I'm not doing Avid. I'm in Premiere. I know what I'm doing in Premiere. I don't want to do anything else. And I think I was just intimidated by it because it's
very intimidating.
When you look at the interface, it's just like,
like,
this isn't very, it's not welcoming at all.
No,
like,
not at all.
It's too technical.
Yeah.
But once I started learning the technical sides of it, I was like, who uses Premiere? Like, get on Avid. I don't know what Premiere is. Sorry.
Right.
It's below
Premiere,
me.
I've never heard of her.
Exactly.
That's great.
So I was excited to just like learn the technical side of everything, because it really makes you feel cool when you're like just working on the keyboard and know like all the shortcuts, and you're like, oh yeah, let me just hit this real quick. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's so interesting that you like knew you wanted to be, at least in post-production, from the get-go, because I'm a similar way in that my very first project that I did, even though, like I was telling you before we started rolling, it was like, two friends helping me, and it was like really bad and filmed in the middle of nowhere. I like knew from then on. No, that Blueberries is my thesis film.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm talking about something I made back when I was like 14. That is, no one should view at all.
Look at it.
Yeah. No, Blueberries is was going to be my thesis film before we had to postpone. But I like knew from that project that I wanted to write and direct. You know what I mean? I loved it so much. And I interview so many people who are not that way. I feel like most of the people that I've talked to, it's more of a circuitous route of like, well, like you said, I took this one class in high school and then that
Yeah,
made me think about this. And then I get to SCAD and I'm like, I don't know if I want to direct or whatever. So it's so like, I love hearing that because that's like just when you know deep down inside, like, this is what I need to be doing.
exactly. Yeah, I'm like, I was like, I had a lot of friends who weren't really sure exactly what they
Hmm.
wanted to do. And I was always just like, oh, look, sucks to be you. I'm joking, I'm joking, I'm joking, not
No,
sucks
I
to be you.
know. I same thing in high school. I went to a math and science high school, and all my friends were like, I don't know what I want to do, and I'm like, I've known for
Look,
years what I
right,
want to
like I
do.
already applied, already got
Yeah,
in, like I'm
exactly.
not doing anything else.
Yeah.
I guess it was just like I'm really into like puzzles and like mind games and stuff like that. And I feel like I guess that's kind of the way I look at editing. It's just like really it's just one big puzzle piece and
Yeah.
trying to just moving stuff around and knowing where to put different things. So I think that was what really attracted me to it in the beginning. And then it just expanded into this whole big thing for me.
Hmm.
But I'm honestly happy and thankful that I knew what I wanted to do from the beginning because I honestly can't picture myself doing anything else
Right.
or being in any other industry. So I'm like, yeah, this has to work or else I don't know what I'm gonna do.
So was there like, um, did you grow up in like a artistic environment, and like were you like a
Nope.
big movie consumer at a young age?
No.
Yeah.
It's so weird. It's so weird. And I'm like, I wish I was because
Right.
I talk to other people and they're like, yeah, I've been in love with movies from the beginning,
Yep.
always watching them. I mean, like, I loved Disney movies when I was a kid.
Hmm.
I had like all the
As we all
VHS
did.
tapes, right? Like, that's all I would watch, honestly, were Disney movies. But I
Hmm.
wasn't really like the biggest eyes glued to a TV unless
Hmm.
it was like a kid movie or something. But
Right. And so,
no, it so that's kind of random almost.
right. I mean, that almost just makes it seem like, well, like it was meant to be that way because you just like knew that's what it was. But did whatever you like told your family that like you wanted to go to film school, did you receive any like maybe you should do something else type of conversations, or were they like totally behind
Yeah,
you?
so in the beginning they were a little iffy about it. My mom
Right.
was like, well, maybe because I mean, let's be honest, God is a really expensive school. And my mom was like, maybe you should do community college first and then go to SCAD. And I was like, well, what am I going to do that for? I was like, I'm happy I didn't because that's honestly just a waste of time because you take
Hmm.
all those courses in community college and none of those add up to SCAD because it's
Yeah.
all completely like that's math, English, and this is film
Yeah.
coloring, like drawing 101,
Right.
lighting, all this stuff. So it's just like that would have been a waste of time. And then my dad was more so, he just wanted, in the beginning, he didn't really think that there was any money in the
Hmm.
industry or money in what I wanted to do. So I think he was just viewing it more so like as a money thing for me.
Hmm.
But me, I was just like, the money isn't the biggest thing for me. Like, I just want to be happy doing what I'm doing. I don't want to be just doing something just because I have to make a
Hmm.
living.
Yeah.
So he was more so going like, oh, why don't you want to be a lawyer or a doctor or da, 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 da. And I'm like, I don't care about any of that stuff. That stuff doesn't really excite me. Like, I don't even know where I would go into that, like what
Hmm.
part of that I would go into. So he would be a constant like, why are you doing this? Like, you should do this. And but I'm just like, I'm kind of stubborn and just like, I'm like, no, I don't want to do that. Stop
Right.
asking me. I'm doing this. This is what I'm doing. And get on it. And
Yeah,
eventually,
exactly.
look, they toured SCAD and they fell in love with it. They were like, oh, okay, this is a really nice school.
Hmm.
Um, they probably still wish I did community college or something to save money, but
Right.
but they're good. They're on board now.
Good. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure now that you're like,
At
now that
this
you're
point, I'm
graduated and doing it.
graduated.
Yeah, exactly. So I had I posted on like the Tungsten Originals Instagram story, which if you don't follow Tungsten, you should definitely go do that if you're listening. But I posted that I
Do.
was like
Oh,
interviewing you and asking people for questions, and I had multiple people want to talk about the editor director relationship. And I'm glad people brought that up because I
yeah.
think that is like, especially if you're just starting out, like maybe you're a freshman at film school or editing something in high school like you started out doing, it's really hard to learn about how that works.
Hmm.
There's a bunch of YouTube tutorials on how to like cut in Premiere, but not a lot about how to deal with a difficult director who like won't listen to your
Exactly.
ideas or whatever. Um, so once now that you like have all of this experience with editing and are working professionally, what is your like biggest philosophy about that collaborative process?
Honestly, I think the director and editor relationship is probably the most important part when it comes to filming. And I feel like I'm happy you brought this up because I feel like it's not talked about enough,
Yeah.
especially at SCAD. It's kind of just like, okay, done, like pass it off to the editor and that's it. Like, but
Yeah, exactly.
it really, honestly, in my opinion, I think it's a good idea for, well, at least like at SCAD or like when you're in film school, for the editor to be involved from the beginning. And I've always said this. It's just because editors see things in a different way and they catch
Hmm.
more specifics because they know what they're going to be looking for when it comes to being in the cutting room.
Right.
And sometimes that's not always something that the director is even thinking about. And
Hmm.
so like when I'm working with Jewel, he already knows. He's like, okay, like Jayda, you're right by me. Like, what needs to be going on? And it makes the process so much easier, and you need to develop that director editor relationship from the beginning, because it's just like if you guys aren't on the same page, then how are you going to create a film together that
Yeah.
gets both views through to the
Right.
audience?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because I that's another thing that like it's either perceived as like the editor is just the button pusher, and just like is the
Hmm.
actual one sitting in front of the computer doing the things. Or
Yeah.
people think about it as like there's just a ton of butting heads, and at the end of the day, like the director's the director, so they have like the final say on everything. So I wanted to ask you about like how do you balance those visions? I'm sure like what's so great about you and Jewel is that like y'all work together a lot, and like you said, you've been like with this exposure, which we'll talk about in a little bit. I know you were involved like early on. It's not like you just
Hmm.
came on during post production or whatever. Um,
Yeah.
so what would you say about like navigating those relationships, especially if it's like a brand new person who you've never worked with before?
Right. So actually, my other senior thesis, because I had two, was exposure, and then the other one was out of many with Bex.
Right.
I don't. Do you know Bex?
I
Yeah.
think I know the name. Yeah.
Yeah. So we've never really, we had like a few classes together and became friends that way, but we've never actually like worked together. So I ended up editing her thesis. So usually, like the way I would approach it in school was I'd make a cut based off of exactly what the director wanted. And
Right.
then from there, I'd go in and give my feedback. And you just have to be patient. You have to be very descriptive, and you kind of got to explain like the different ways to view things, because sometimes they're not viewing it from that. They just see their vision and that's it.
Hmm.
And you kind of got to like break, it's weird, but you kind of got to like break that and be like,
Hmm.
okay, what about this, because this may get X, Y, and Z across instead of going this direction.
Hmm.
um it's I've heard so many stories where like the directors and editors just go at it constantly, and like the editor is just not happy with the director at all because the
Hmm.
director isn't having an open mind. And I feel like it's important for the director to have an open mind, because at the end of the day, the editor knows this film. You may have shot it and like, but the editor knows the film like the back of its hand, because
Yeah.
they're constantly looking at this footage 24/7.
Hmm.
Like they probably know the footage well than the director does, because they're the
Hmm.
ones working with it. So I feel like you really just got to listen to them and take their advice, because they could be pointing something out to you that you didn't see from the beginning, and it really, like, the story changes completely. Like, with Out
Yeah.
of Many, I'm excited for Out of Many to come out for you guys, for everyone to see it. But with Out of Many, it started off going one way in the beginning and then completely changed in the end. And so
Mhm.
did Exposure also. And that's, I feel like that's usually what happens, because you go in thinking one thing, and then you finally sit down and look at the footage and you're like, okay, wait, maybe this doesn't really work that way.
Yeah.
Let's try it this way.
Mhm.
Yeah, so it's really important. And I hate that it doesn't get talked about a lot at SCAD. I mean, in the more advanced editing classes, it gets talked about because it's
Yeah.
a room full of editors, but it doesn't get talked about in, like the directing classes like it should, because I feel like for some reason they all just forget about post production and they're
I
like,
know,
okay,
and
just
we've talked about it on the podcast multiple times. Is like the way, even though I like SCAD's quarter system, like
yeah.
that just doesn't leave post production time. Like I know so many films that it's like we like class projects like like the PSAs for like your pre-production class or whatever. Like you still have to shoot something, so it's like we
Yeah.
shot it and we just like threw it together an ungraded cut with like time code on it and exported it like the night before, and now we will never revisit it. And it's like
Exactly.
so important to have that like time for the edit to like change and mature and stuff, because that is like, I mean, that's where it really, that's where it like
Comes
becomes a
together.
movie. Yeah.
So yeah, exactly. It's not the movie until you start editing it. And
Yeah.
it's going to take a few tries before it even still flows correctly.
Hmm.
So it just, I don't know how to explain it, but I need everyone listening to this need to stress to you that the director and editor relationship is extremely important. Extremely, extremely important, because without your editor, you're not going to have your film. And if you
Hmm.
don't have that good relationship with your editor, and if you don't make them comfortable or make them feel like their voices are being heard, then they're not going to want to put in as much effort into
Yeah.
your project, into your film. So it's really important to just listen to what they have to say and take it into consideration, because 9 times out of 10 they're telling you something that you definitely should listen to and should want to hear, and something that's going to make the film 10 times better.
Yeah, 100%. I like an example of that is this short that I shot in 2018. Editing took so long because like I had one person that was going to be an editor, and then their schedule got booked, so like I went to another editor, and things like that, it just gets drawn out. But I had a SCAD friend edit it, and like the intro sequence is just, he totally came up with it himself. Like it was totally his idea. Basically, the movie, it's called 38,600 miles per hour. I call it 38 for short. And it's basically
Mm-hmm.
about this guy who like loves space and wants to leave his hometown, and that like causes strain on his relationships. And my editor called me and he's like, okay, this isn't working in a lot of ways. And I fully trust him because we had worked on a lot of different things together as like a director editor relationship. So I was like, yeah, you're right. That can be hard to admit from like a writer director
Yeah.
standpoint, but I'm like, yeah, it's not the best. um, and then he's like, let me try something. And he made this intro sequence that had like vintage, like space race footage with this music. And it just like totally introed the film. And now it's like my favorite part of the movie. And it was
Mm-hmm.
100% his idea. I didn't have any of that written in the script or anything. So, in the same way, like you're speaking out to the audience about that importance, I want to speak to the people who are those directors with like what they believe is like the perfect vision. An editor is your friend. Like
Yes.
I used to, those the short films that I made like in Mississippi before I had proper film experience, I edited them all. An editor is your friend. They make your life, they should at
They're
least make your
trying
life
to
easier and
help.
better. Yeah, like they, it's really great whenever multiple people like a director and editor lock in on the same vision, because you know you're going towards the same goal but with different skill sets. And whenever you have just like an amazing editor, I think that's something that people maybe realize too late in film school, because they
Yeah.
maybe don't get the chance to like sit with a great editor. But like, oh my gosh, does it make a film so much better?
it makes a huge, and I feel like you can tell when you're watching a film, like a short film or like a student film, when there wasn't really a good connection between the editor and the director,
Oh,
or
100%.
when the director didn't allow the editor to really give their part into
Yeah.
it. Because I mean, like the editor is they're creative also. They're not just some machines who are
Yeah.
just putting the pieces together. Like it doesn't have to go the way the script says it goes. And 9 times out
Hmm.
of 10, it probably shouldn't. It probably
Yeah.
should go some completely other different way.
Right.
So it needs to be stressed. It needs to be stressed. It just sucks because I when I was in SCAD and when I was in my post production classes, it would just suck hearing like all these stories about how these editors just weren't having or enjoying themselves working on these projects because
Yeah.
they weren't allowed to have any input on how the film would turn out. And I don't think that's right. Don't think that's fair because at the end
Yeah.
of the day, like I said before, they are also creatives.
Yeah, exactly. And it's even better, like you said earlier, once you can bring them in to the project like as early as possible, because then they really get to like, they of course learn about the film from watching all the footage, but like once they know about all of the trials and tribulations of like pre-production and production, then they get to go into it's like they're it's like a this is a stupid way to say it. It's like a cheat code kind of. They go into post production with all this information. And they're like, I already have like a solid idea of how to do this.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like I remember when Jewel was shooting Exposure, I went to and I'm not the editor doesn't have to be there like 24/7, but it'd
Right.
be nice to like pop in every now and then. And so
Hmm.
I would pop in and I'd like see what they were doing and I remember I told him I was like, you really need to get, something else to follow along with this or else it's just
Hmm.
not gonna connect like it should. So it's just
Yeah.
and it's really they should be viewed as like your second or third pair of eyes, really is how I think of it. Like they are there to back you up and make sure
Yeah.
you have the correct stuff that you need to make sure your movie is what you want it to be or what it should be.
Yeah. I mean, it's so nice to have someone come on set that's like, oh, you didn't get coverage of that. You're going to want coverage of that. Do that right now.
Exactly.
So I couldn't agree more. We're talking a lot about that relationship, of course. A question I wrote down that I think is like, this is such a case by case basis, but like it's an important thing, I think. When do you know to put your foot down about like how if a director is being too like abrasive or like too married to their vision? When do you know to be like, you got to trust me on this?
I honestly I don't know if I
That's a
have
difficult
the right
question.
answer because yeah, I've honestly been blessed to not have to really deal with this situation because
Hmm.
usually the people that I've worked with have an open mind. But
Hmm.
I remember like talking in class with Newton and stuff, and we'd go over situations like this, and really it's just like you just have to find a way to deliver what you're saying without offending the director
Right.
because I feel like the directors when they're looking at their stuff, I'm not saying they're fragile, but it's kind of fragile because it's like that's their baby, they don't want you to tell them, oh, this looks bad, or not that it looks bad, but like this is wrong, you need to do this
Hmm.
instead. So I really feel like it's all about the delivery and how you deliver what you're saying,
Hmm.
because if you just come off right off the bat like, no, I don't like this, I don't want to do this, I don't think we should do it this way, then yeah, they're gonna be like, what do you mean? Like,
Yeah.
this is mine, I want
Right.
to do it like this. Like, it's all about suggesting. And
Hmm.
at the end of the day, it's up to the director to take those suggestions. But I feel like if you're firm enough on your suggestion and really, show them what you're talking about. Like
Right.
if you sometimes like just saying it to them isn't the same as just doing the cut real quick and comparing it to what it was before so that they can see, oh, okay, maybe they're right, maybe we should go about it this way, or it doesn't even have to be that way completely, but just to see what you're talking about and you can just go from there instead of just, no, it should be like this, or no, it has to be like this because of X, Y, and Z. Like, show them what you're talking about because as editors, yeah, editors, it's easy to picture it in your mind because that's all you're doing is you're cutting in your head and you're
Yeah.
thinking about it constantly.
Yeah.
So it's not going to be, they're not going to think of it the same way. So that's why I say
Hmm.
it's easier to just show them what you're talking about rather than just saying it.
Totally. Like if you think
Yeah.
this scene works better here, go ahead and before your next meeting, as we said, there's so many meetings before the next meeting, cut that, render it out, and then show them like, I know we were working on this, but I did this. And then that can, I think also
Exactly.
like
Look,
the right director would really, if they know their stuff, like would just really appreciate that because it just makes their job easier as well. Like you said, it's easier to see than to like imagine, because then you're on the same
yeah,
page.
exactly. Exactly. Like just it doesn't even have to be perfect, but just throw that cut together real quick.
Hmm.
Don't make any final changes, but
Right.
just throw it together real quick. Just show them that snippet of
Yeah.
the scene that you're talking about so that they can see. And 9 times out of 10, it'll work.
So I want to talk about exposure. Last week, whenever these episodes come out, the episode that comes out before this one is with Jewel, who is the writer and director of Exposure. So, we've kind of got like a double feature of episodes on Exposure, which is awesome. So, how did Exposure come to be and how did you get involved with it?
Well, for those of you who don't know, Jewel is my absolute best friend. So I was already involved when he first came up with the idea and when, he was thinking about what he wanted to write. So, I mean, I started off, I mean, I was already automatically just going to be the editor just because,
Right.
that's what I do. And, we work together. But in the
Hmm.
beginning, I was more so just there as a friend. I leave all the scripts and stuff up to him. He'll send me a script and be like, what do you think about this? And I'll say, I don't know, ask my little questions. And then he'll be like, you're
Yeah.
right. And then he'll tweak it to that.
So with Exposure, I feel really lucky to be like I took what was it senior two with Jewel, so like I got to read the scripts in class and hear about the like production process and stuff. So that was like a really cool behind the scenes view into the project. Um, so what was your biggest challenge in post production?
Ooh, good question. What was the biggest challenge?
And I'm curious what if you and Jewel have the same answer.
I think biggest uh the biggest thing we had to try and avoid was that there was a lot of talking back and forth and
Hmm.
not enough showing things through action. So it
Right.
was more so just talking about it and talking about how the characters feel and like them like saying how they feel and all of that instead of just showing it visually and leaving it up to the viewers to take their own take from it. I think that
Hmm.
was like the main thing. So I was trying so like when I was editing, I tried my best to like grab any little moments where it was like that character just staring off or them just like making any like little gestures. You'll see there's a lot of I tried to focus on like a lot of body movements
Right.
to express how the characters were feeling instead of just going through the full on arguments or like full on conversations between Marcus, which is the main character, and Chelsea, which is his best friend. Like they go through a little moment where they're talking, and I, try to cut back and forth between
Hmm.
that and just not give away so much. I think we were giving away too much with talking instead of just
Right.
letting the actors act and get their emotions across to the viewers through just seeing them move through their movements instead of just hearing them talk about it.
So, with Exposure, like, of course, it was Jules' thesis film and one of your thesis films. So, like, you had to have it done by a specific time. But, post production can take a really long time. What did you learn about editing, or did you come out of that project with like a new perspective um, on editing after working on a project like Exposure?
Yeah, I learned how to intersect the film with different moments that are going on simultaneously
Hmm.
instead of just having it um, like A, B, and C you could do. ACB or
Right.
BAC. It's, like instead of like the conversation doesn't have to be, okay, these two characters finish their conversation. Now move on to the next two characters having their conversation. Now move on to the next two characters. Like you can do them having their conversation and then boom, go to the next people having their conversation, go back and forth. You just have to find talking points that kind of connect the two, if that makes any
Hmm.
sense.
Yeah,
So
totally.
I think that, yeah, I think that was one of the main things that I took away from exposure, like working with it, was you don't have to have everything play out in like the same order when it comes to conversations. Like it's okay to cut a conversation or cut certain parts of that conversation out if it's not really needed. And that was probably like one of the big things.
I think it's really good practice for everyone who's in like any role that's like affecting those creative decisions on a film set, but especially like the, top of the ladder people like the director and editor stuff. I think it's really good, and something I try to do. It's good to assume that your audience is like smart enough to figure it out. You know what I mean? Like you
Mm-hmm.
don't, and I know we talked about this on like multiple scripts, even, my script in our senior two class. Like you don't want to spoon feed your audience like every little detail. Like they're people too, and they can piece together what people are
Exactly.
talking about.
Exactly. Yeah. And that was the main thing with exposure. I think we were spoon feeding way too much. So when we got to the
Hmm.
cutting room, we were like, okay, we need to dial it back a bit.
Yeah.
How do we not give away so much so quick?
Hmm.
And that definitely was, it was a big little project to do.
So what was it like comparing your experience of editing Exposure with Jewel, who's like one of your closest friends and that you have experience working with, versus Out of Many with the team that you're kind of new to? Like, how does that relationship, like affect your process?
It really mainly when it came to like reviewing cuts with the directors, I kind of had to take a different approach to both of them because
Right.
Bex, yeah, she's my friend, but I'm not as close to her like I am with Jewel. So with Jewel, I don't really have to always watch the way I deliver things because he knows like I don't mean it in any type of way. Like it's literally just
Yeah.
how it's just me talking. That's how
Yeah.
I deliver things sometimes. And so I'm like, okay, I
Yeah.
get it. But with Bex, I didn't want to like offend her or like say anything the wrong way. So I kind of just had to, which is like what I was talking about, like just watch your delivery when you're talking to your directors and they won't get offended. So I was watching the way I delivered certain things to her and certain critiques. And but me and her, we had honestly like we had a really great relationship when we were working on Out of Many. Like we didn't have any issues or like any like bumping heads or anything. We were usually on the same page the whole time, because we would talk to each other about everything and share our sides and our views of how things should go. So it
Hmm.
made it a lot easier. And I'd show her a cut of how I felt like something should go, and show her my side, and we'll see her side, and just
Hmm.
compare the two. So that's why I say it's so important to do that because you got to show them. So it
Yeah.
was really the main difference was really just my delivery and how I say things and not
Because you
to
could be like,
offend anyone.
Jewel, you're wrong. This isn't working. Listen to me.
Cursing out real quick, like, no, I don't want to hear
Yeah.
that. We're doing it like this.
Right. I was looking, so I was, in preparation for this, I was looking at your website and like, looking at your resume and the stuff you've worked on. And I saw that you worked on this Tom Ford fashion film. So I wonder, like, it seems that I could be wrong, but it seems that your like focus is like the narrative style of editing, the narrative side of filmmaking. Would I be correct in
Hmm.
that?
Yeah.
Okay. So with making like a fashion film, do you think it's good for editors like yourself who have known what you want to do and the type of stuff you want to make for a long time? Do you think it's a good practice to like venture out into like fashion films or documentaries or like, art house stuff? Do you think that experience makes you just a better editor overall?
Of course, yeah, because it gives you like a different like idea of how to approach different situations.
Hmm.
And honestly, like working on like those fashion films that I did work on, it was really a lot of fun for me because it's like short little music videos almost.
Yeah,
And
you have so much more
yeah,
creative freedom.
exactly. It's a
Yeah.
lot more creative freedom. So, and it's just like, why would you not want to like expand your knowledge of, because it's editing isn't, there isn't just one type of editing, you know, you have different options and different techniques. So like, why wouldn't you want to explore all those different
Yeah.
options? It's not going to hurt you. It can only make you better and perfect your craft and what you do. So I feel like it definitely, working on like little fashion films, like music videos and stuff, it helps when you're trying to create I'm blanking on the word, it starts with an M. You know, why am I blanking on this word right now?
Not montage. That's not the right word, is it?
Montage. Yes,
Oh,
that is the word I'm looking for. Montage.
we are leaving that in. Oh, we're leaving that in. That's so funny. Oh,
That is literally the word. I'm
what's
like,
even
I'm pretty sure
funnier
it's an M.
is that we're about to talk about this like amazing editing job you have, and we couldn't remember what the word montage was.
Montage, man. Oh my god, my coworkers are gonna see this and be like, "Are you serious? Are you serious right
Ugh,
now?" Like,
that is
but
so
yes,
funny.
I feel like I'm a really big fan of montages in films. I love it. It's my
Yeah.
favorite. So I try to. You'll see with when these films come out, you'll see I try to include a montage whenever I can.
Mhm.
And I feel like when you do like these little fashion films and music videos, it's really just one big montage, to be honest with you, because
Mhm.
you're still telling a story. It's just you have music in the background instead of people talking. Um, but you're still trying to tell a story through the way the actors are moving and their
Mhm.
eye contact and stuff like that. So that's what I was trying to say was, yes, I think working on little short projects like that do strengthen you as an editor, because it gives you more variety and makes you think of different ways to tell a story.
So I want to dive into this amazing job that you have that you were calling us from, the gray
Yeah.
void that you're calling us from. Um, so you are like a post production assistant, or is it an assistant editor? What's the proper term?
Post production assistant.
Okay, so you're a post production assistant at Marvel, which is like,
Hmm.
I mean, I'm sure now you're probably like, oh yeah, I'm used to it, but like I want to remind you that that is quite amazing and like very, very cool. So, you know, I feel like I'm gonna sound like, you know, a grandmother. Tell me all about it. How'd you get it? What's it like? I'm so proud of you.
Thank you. Honestly, it's kind of crazy how I got the job, because so I'm in a SCAD post production alum page on Facebook, and a SCAD alum posted in the Facebook page and was like, "Hey, you know, this really big company." They couldn't give any like specific details, but they were like, "This really big company is looking for a post production assistant in Atlanta." By the way, I was still in Savannah at this point, but
Mhm.
they're like looking for this post production assistant. This is when it starts, when it ends, blah 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 blah. So
Right.
I messaged him and I sent him my resume and my website and all my information, and he sent it off to the post production supervisor for which turned out to be Marvel, but I didn't know at the time. And luckily, I guess they liked my stuff enough to set up an interview. That it all happened in a day, by the way.
Oh
But we
wow.
set up an interview. Yeah,
That was a big day for
it
you.
was not. It was nuts. But I was able to set up an interview with them, and you know, I'm going through the interview. I'm trying to, you know, play it cool, because I
Yeah,
really was
yeah.
stressing. I was like, I need a job. I'm not doing anything. I've applied to so many jobs and haven't heard back to anyone. So I'm just trying to play it cool. And then, you know, they just like gradually just like mention like, oh, it's for a Marvel film, and I'm like, oh, cool, Marvel. Like, you know, trying to play it cool,
You're like,
nothing
oh, Marvel.
crazy,
Yeah, I've heard of
not
that.
having
I've
a
heard it's like a
fangirl
small
moment.
indie
Yeah.
company. Yeah, they make some stuff.
You know, nothing crazy or anything.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, so I had my interview that night, and then they still had other people that they had to interview. So they called me back a little bit later on that night and was like, "Hey, just so you know, we want to offer you this job." Duh. And I
Wow.
literally sat there. I called my mom and I cried. I was like, "Mom, I got
Yeah.
the job!" Ah!
Oh my
Because I was like,
goodness.
"Wow, like This has happened so quick. It happened so quick. But I
Yeah.
guess, I think it was, not that, because personally, I don't think my reel is anything crazy right now. I actually need to work on it. But I think it was just because I was trying to play it relaxed and just talk to them like normal people during the interview.
Yeah.
I guess that was a plus for me.
Hmm.
So so yeah, it it worked out. I'm blessed, extremely blessed, because this all happened from a Facebook post.
Yeah.
So join those Facebook groups because they
Yeah.
help.
I have heard of so many people like that story getting insanely good jobs from Facebook groups, and it's
From Facebook.
pretty incredible. So we have I've got a submitted question from the audience. Kara Ang, friend of the show, asked from our Instagram post,
Oh,
what's the
Kara.
difference between editing in a school or indie setting versus a major studio?
Oh, um,
I'm sure there's a couple of differences.
not that many. And I'll try.
Yeah, yeah.
There's a specific way to do everything. Um, like when we were going in school, you're kind of just figuring it out as you go. But here, everyone literally has a very specific um, job and part
Mm,
of the film that they're supposed to tend to. And it kind of just helps things run smoother because you don't have multiple people just like trying to figure out the same thing. Like, okay, you're going to figure out
right.
this. So that way it'll help this person. They can figure out what they're going to do for the next part. So, and it helps things move along quicker and smoother. So it's not just like, oh, I thought you were doing this. Oh no, I thought you were doing that. Oh no, you said you were gonna do it. Like,
Yeah,
no.
yeah.
Um,
So every
everyone
student
has
project ever.
it. Exactly. Like the second assistant editors, they pretty much prep everything for the first assistant editors so that the first assistant editors can prep everything for the editors. So it's literally just
Right.
like a line, just you do this so I can do this, so they can
Hmm.
do this, so they can do that.
It's a really solid like formula
That's
that they've perfected over the years.
exactly. I mean, I would hope so that they got it
Yeah,
down at this
yeah.
point.
Seriously, I would hope it would take something like that to make the highest grossing film of all time.
Exactly. So then yeah, and then it's just like, if one person finishes their job early, then, they can knock on the next person's door like, hey, do you need help with anything? I'm all set with mine. No, you're good. Okay, cool. I'm gonna find other work
Mhm.
if there's anything to do. I'm not,
That
did
just
that answer
man.
her question?
No, it absolutely did. It absolutely did. Yeah, because that's something that like I was telling you, I'm just like a COVID PA, but even on that, I've learned so much about how like network TV works and how you're absolutely right. There is like for any minute specific job, there is one person and it's their entire job to do that. So
No
it's
matter how small the job is, it's like
yeah.
that is your job.
Yeah, it's what they do. They're an expert in what they do. So it works out.
And
Um
that's why they run so smoothly.
yeah, exactly. Exactly. I wanted to ask what is something that at this job, I assume this would probably happen really immediately after you got it. What was like this huge thing that you thought, oh, I totally didn't learn that at film school. Like I've never seen anyone talk about this because that like, again, like we said before we started rolling, like there's so much you can learn from like YouTube tutorials, so much you can learn at film school, of course. But even I, again, as a lowly COVID PA, have learned stuff that I'm like, I didn't even know.
Hold on, wait. Stop downgrading your job because I've seen what these COVID PAs do, and it's a lot of work. You
It
are
is, I
just
must
as
say.
important.
Thank you. I should have brought out
Stop
my
it.
temp guns and just like started taking temperatures and stuff. I appreciate the confidence boost. But I'm sure you've learned so much stuff that previously you had like no idea existed. So like
Hmm.
what are some of those things?
Um, honestly, I feel like God mainly prepped me to have some idea of the terminology and stuff that's being used. not so much the process of everything. I think the main thing I will
Mm.
say that I learned at SCAD that they do here is it's called script syncing. I'm sure you've learned that, right? Yeah. I think
Yeah,
they
yeah,
teach
I've heard
everyone
about it.
that
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was like the main thing. I was like, "Ooh, I got it. I know how to do this. I can do that.
Right.
Got
Yeah.
it down." Um, but even then, it's just like there's so many different ways to do things, and it was kind of it's really just cool to see the correct way things are supposed to be done,
Mm.
and the technical side of it, and the reason why things are done certain ways, and like how these big movies like turn around their projects so quickly and like are
Yeah.
able to get so much stuff done. Um, like one thing I thought was pretty cool, which I feel like might be known, but it wasn't known for me, is that the editor, they can see what, as soon as a shot is taken on set, it gets uploaded to like their cloud and they can automatically see it.
Wow.
So that
Huh.
helps because what's the director, they want, he's been wanting to see like cuts at the end of the day
Hmm.
from the editor that of what they shot that day. So it helps because the editor can see as soon as a shot's taken, it it goes to us. So they're
Wow.
automatically like they're just going at it. I'm like, I did not know that. I thought you had to wait till the end of the day till
Yeah.
everything was done. But no,
Right.
they're constantly going at it, constantly working. Um, let's see, what's another thing? I'm
Wow.
also learning. My post production supervisor is really he's been really helpful. He every minute he teaches me something new.
Mm.
Um, and it's more so like not on the editing side, but more so just about how to run post production or like the
Hmm.
post side of everything. And oh my gosh, I don't know how he does it, but there's just he knows so much, and he'll tell me all this stuff, and I'm like, how do you remember all of this? How do you know all of this?
Right.
How am I going to remember all of this for the future? So I'm like,
Yeah.
I remember him telling me this, but it's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, but so like I oh, one thing actually at SCAD, when like the scripty takes those script notes for the editor and they give it to the editor,
Hmm.
you have your script supervisor on set. I never really understood what I was supposed to do with those script notes.
Right.
Like I knew like yeah, they tell you like what shots are good or what shots, what the director liked, what they didn't like, but because I usually would still go through each shot anyways and take my own notes on it. But here the script notes are actually extremely important, extremely vital. I have to make like a whole book for the editor, which is
Mm.
like all the notes of what they shot that day. But it has like notes on VFX because when you're working with something that has a lot of VFX in it, the editor, the VFX hasn't been done yet, so she doesn't, she's looking at something, but you don't really know what it is because the VFX isn't done yet. So you need the notes to tell you, okay, this is what it's supposed to be, this is what it's going to look like. Um, and then it also it's really important because it helps you keep track of like all the takes,
Yeah.
all the scenes and all that stuff, and what issues they had or what's supposed to be there and what isn't there but was supposed to be there or why it wasn't there, so that way the editor doesn't have to go and start asking questions because they already
Hmm.
know it right then and there. And I feel like as SCAD, like the script notes were mainly just like, oh, director really liked this one, no good,
Yeah.
director
Yeah.
didn't
That's
like
yeah,
this.
that's exact. Yeah. That's
That's
literally the only note.
literally
Yeah.
exactly. But there's so much more stuff that goes into it, and I'm like, okay, because you line it up with the script, so you have the script on one side and then the notes on the other side, and you see which part of the script each shot goes with. So it
Hmm.
helps. So you're not like looking back and forth like, oh, where is this supposed to go? Oh, it's supposed to go right here because that's where it says.
Right. Right.
um, But it's honestly, it's super cool just getting to see the correct way and process to do things rather than just everyone just throwing everything at each other and be like, okay, here's all your stuff, go at it, have fun, let me
Yeah.
see what you can do.
That's really, yeah, that's so cool because like that's one of the best ways to learn is to see how the experts do it. Like see how the top dogs are doing it. So
Exactly. And luckily uh I'm getting to work with such an amazing team because they're all so helpful and like always trying to like if you have a question about anything, they're always open. Like,
mhm.
yeah, let me break this down for you real quick and explain to
Right.
you why we do it this way instead of just being like, oh, it's like this and like push you off to the side. Like it's not like
Yeah.
that. I actually genuinely feel like I'm learning a lot and it's preparing me to do what I need to do to take the next step to
Right.
become an editor. Well, that'll be way down the line, but an assistant editor.
I mean,
um,
that's so amazing to hear because you hear so many horror stories about like people just being such assholes. And so whenever you find
yeah,
people that just like bring you under their wing and just like teach everything, like what a gift, you know what I mean, to someone who's like
yeah.
just starting out. So,
I was super scared. I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know if they're gonna be like really hard or if
right.
they're not gonna want to talk to
Yeah.
me or if they're just gonna just like be bossing me around, like go do this, go do that. But honest, like everyone's super cool, like
Mhm.
super cool. I can't even explain how relaxed everyone is and how they're just like they want you to ask questions and they want you
Yeah.
to understand the process and the reason why they do certain things. So it's it's very refreshing.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, so you know, we've covered like your the through line of your career, how you like found this editing class at school, and you know, in high school, and then worked in college, and you know, now you're working at Marvel, which is still so amazing. Um, so if you could say something to someone just starting out in film school or in high school that has like an inkling of an interest in being an editor, or maybe someone who like you absolutely knows they want to be an editor, with this wealth of information that you have and this wealth of experience, what would you tell them? Like what golden piece of knowledge would you give to carry them, you know, through the next thing?
Honestly, just be open to try and learn as much as you can, even if it's something that you don't want to do, because 9 times out of 10 later on it's going to help you. You just might not
Hmm.
realize it right then and there. But and I know I one of the things I struggled with, like when we graduated, I was like, I felt like I wasn't doing anything because we're used to like having school like in
Yeah.
our backhand, like okay, like I have to do this for school, but when you're done with school, you're literally just on your own and like you're just like, okay,
You're like,
now
well, my
what?
schedule just cleared up a good bit.
Exactly. And like you can't you can't judge your process and like where you're at based off of what you see everyone else doing on social media, which is probably was one of like the big things for me because I'd see all of my SCAD friends like they're still, even after graduating, they're still creating films and they're
Hmm.
still doing all this creative stuff and doing so many things, and I was literally just sitting there just working at a restaurant like not doing
Right.
anything. Like I it was stressing me out for real because I'd be
Oh,
watching everyone on
I
social
compare myself
media.
to other people on social media all the time. It's
Ah,
I'm so bad
it
at it. Yeah.
it's so hard not to, but
Hmm.
you really need to not do that
Yeah.
because geez, man, it really stresses you out. It
Hmm.
stresses you out completely, and then it makes you feel like you're not almost like you're not worth it, and just like you're not going to make it because you're not doing anything, and you see
Right.
everyone else doing something, and you're just sitting there. And I was like, and but the crazy thing is, I tell myself I'd be like, okay, I'd find different things that I could be editing and different things I could be working on, and I'd start the process of doing it and never do it.
Mm.
And it
Yeah.
was just I wasn't um what's the word I'm looking for? I I just wasn't I didn't feel like doing anything, if that makes any sense. Like
Hmm.
I wasn't motivated to do anything.
Right.
And it kind of it got to me because I was just like, my parents had asked me, okay, are you applying to jobs? Like, what are you doing? And it's like, yeah, I'm applying to jobs and no one's getting back to me. Like,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't know.
Exactly.
It's just like, I hate it here. I'm done. I don't want to do it anymore.
Right.
Um, but honestly, just I would just say to just try and learn as much as you can. And there's gonna be people that tell you, oh, maybe you should take this route instead. And luckily, I listened to other people's advice, but I didn't really listen.
Right.
But you got to know when to take it, when to not take it, because I remember this was right before I got this job actually, and I was a bartender downtown, and I had a customer, and I was telling her like what I wanted to do. I was like, yeah, I really want to move to Atlanta. I want to, get a job in editing and, in the film industry. And she basically was just like, pretty much just telling me, oh, you're not really going to find anything because nothing's going on right now. And like the film industry is completely closed down. And she kind of was just like shooting me down and shooting me down. It was just like, okay, all right,
Yeah.
well, there
Thank you.
goes that. And then a few weeks later, I got the job, and I was like, "Ha! Like,
Ha.
I got it! Like, I'm doing something." Exactly. So it's just
Yeah.
whenever people are always gonna give you negative energy and tell you all this negative stuff, but you really gotta cancel that out because everyone's timing is differently. I've
Mhm.
come to realize that everyone's timing is differently, and you just gotta move at your own pace because if you go based off of what everyone else is doing, then you're always just gonna feel like you're not good enough or you're not doing enough because there's always someone that's doing more than what you're doing. But
Mhm.
just because you're not doing as much doesn't mean that you're doing bad or anything. It's just where you're at that point, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
And those people that you're comparing yourself to are probably thinking the exact same thing, you know?
exactly. Yeah, exactly. So I think we all, especially as creatives, I think we all go through it where we're just like, I don't know what I'm doing with my life right now because nothing's going on. Um, but you gotta find a way to stay positive about it because it happens to everyone. Like
Hmm.
I'm 100%. I know everyone's gonna go through this. If they haven't yet, those people that you see are constantly doing something, they're gonna go through that moment too
Yeah.
if they haven't already. But you just gotta keep pushing forward and stay positive as much as you can.
I couldn't agree more. And I think that's like a great note to end on because like especially with how the pandemic has just upended everyone's like lives, we're all on social media more and we're all just comparing ourselves more. So I think it's like,
Mm,
you know,
That's
it's good to remember that.
literally this. It's one if one thing this pandemic did is you are literally watching move,
Yeah.
everyone's move constantly, whether it's through their Instagram stories, Snapchat, Facebook. It's it's very toxic.
Yeah.
Very toxic.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Um, Jada, this episode has flown by totally, which I'm so, I wish we had more time, but, I always know it's a good one and it flies by because we're just like going off of one thing to the next. So,
Let's
I
go.
really
Oh my God,
appreciate
it's 10 o'clock
you.
already.
Yeah, exactly. Um, I, I really appreciate you taking the time to sit down at your office, staying after work to do this.
Oh, of course.
I can't wait to like, follow your career through Marvel and like see the future projects that you're doing. And I'd love to have you back on, maybe in a year from now and just get an update on all the cool stuff you're doing because I only assume that it's all just going to be great updates. So,
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to see where Tungsten goes. I hope you and Jewel and Ivy Vision find a way to collab because I honestly
oh
think
yeah.
that will be so amazing to have both of your fan bases joining together to create one big
Yeah.
push for both of your companies. But I know Tungsten
Right.
is going places. I mean, just by the name Tungsten Originals, that just rolls off the tongue perfectly, if you ask me.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm quite proud of the name, I have to say. Well,
So
thank you. That
yes,
does mean a
thank you
lot.
so much.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And you're a friend of me. You're a friend of Tungsten. Anytime you want to work on anything, just let me know, and I'd love to make
Ah,
something happen. So
thank
I'm just a
you.
phone call away.
You will be the first. You will be the first.
Perfect,
Awesome.
perfect.
Thank you so much for
Well,
having me, Wes. I really appreciate it.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and if you're listening to this, be sure to follow Tungsten on all of the social media channels. We also have a TikTok now, so check out our TikTok. And links to Jayda's social media and website and all that kind of stuff is going to be in the description of this episode. And if you're listening to the audio only version, you should hop on over to our YouTube channel and check out the video version, and you can leave in the comments what you thought and stuff. So we're trying to expand to a bunch of different avenues this year. So it's an exciting time. So next episode comes out a week after this one, and thanks again for being on, and thanks everybody for listening. So we'll see you in the next one.
Awesome. Bye, guys. Thank you.